don't know if I've talked about this recently, or if I've talked about this at all. I suppose I've talked about it in passing because I think I've talked about certain people involved in these situations and kind of said what was going to happen, but I didn't really talk about the big picture, I suppose, because I know I've been very open about what I think of Nagoshi, the Yakuza producer, former Yakuza producer, who left Sega after failing to reboot Sakura Wars to start his own studio with the Chinese. Ooh, the almighty Chinese who are gonna save us from wokeness in gaming. Like, oh, China is gonna save us. Like, again, does anyone know how stupid that sounds? This idea that like the fucking commies are gonna swoop in and save us from like hipsters in California. Like, it's downright laughable if you know anything about how the actual Chinese gaming industry is run. Like, like if you were like me, you would know that all their numbers are fake, that they're just trying to break into this market, that they've been ruining gaming for years. People keep blaming woke culture for gaming, but the Chinese are a big reason why that's an issue, right? They keep investing in woke content. Overwatch being a really good example, right? Like, people seem to have this mindset that like China is based, which is not at all the truth. I've seen people say the same thing about Korea, but like that's also ridiculous. See Stellar Blade. So, like, with this in mind, with this current state of thing in mind, like, we really do need to talk about what's happened with Nagoshi, what's gonna happen with like Grasshopper Manufacturer and whoever else has signed NetEase deals, because this was a trend a couple of years back. I don't remember if I talked about it, but a lot of fairly prominent lower tier Japanese developers went out and signed a deal with the Chinese company NetEase, right? Like, I know Grasshopper Manufacturer did, and I know Nagoshi did. I think there was one other person. I don't know if it was like the Danganronpa people or the Zero Escape guy. I don't know. Okay, but like a couple of them were coming out and doing this because I think at the time there were concerns about the direction where Japanese gaming was going, because Nintendo was taking over. There was no running away to PlayStation and Xbox anymore. A lot of these like smaller developers were really struggling because they couldn't compete on Nintendo hardware with better games, and PlayStation and Xbox were just falling through. All of these companies were begging people to buy PlayStations and to not buy Switches, and it just didn't happen. And so like a lot of them have been like were really struggling to make ends meet. They were losing. They were just bleeding money. They were not able to remain competitive, and so the Chinese came in and made all these big promises. Like, oh, we're gonna do this for you. We're gonna give you all this money and all this time to make the games that you want to make, right? And of course, a lot of these people took the bait. They believed it. They thought it was true. Fucking Nagoshi was probably like banging some guy are you whore, and he was just like, ha ha ha, I'll be able to do what I did at Sega, only with the backing of the Chinese now. Like, they won't make me oversee Puyo Puyo tournaments. I get to do what I want. I get a LARP as a Yakuza. Like, oh, like this is what happened. Okay, they signed this deal, they entered this contract, and produced absolutely nothing of value. Okay, like, I don't know like what was going on behind the scenes. It's impossible to say because like this is pretty typical for a lot of these like spiritual successor studios where like they leave their established place of business and start up somewhere else and have to like backtrack and like start new companies. Like, it happened with Platinum, it happened with Tango Gameworks. Like Nagoshi, I think, really thought he could just kind of do what Hideo Kojima is doing and just like get a company to invest in him and just do whatever he wanted without really producing a product, right? Like it's been like several years since he left the RCG studio now. I think like over about 3 or 4. Like, and he really, really, really should have produced something by now, right? And the Chinese aren't happy. The Chinese have told him and other Japanese devs, like, oh, we're cracking the whip. We're cracking the whip. Like, oh, we're cutting you off. We're cutting you off. We're not giving you any more money. We're not extending your deadlines. You need to put out something now. And so Nagoshi, without even able to a trailer, right, is suddenly in this position where he's actually going to have to produce results. And it's not going to end well at all for anybody involved. But this is the reality of the gaming industry right now, is that this isn't the Chinese like coming in and like bullying like innocent Japanese developers. This is a douchebag from Japan who has spent the past 10 years or more fucking over Nintendo, trying everything in his power to keep up the illusion that PlayStation is the cool, trendy console for mature adults. You know, we saw this retard do everything in his power to stay off of Nintendo hardware. You know, Soccer Wars didn't come over. No Yakuza ports came over. He cried and bitched and moaned for over a decade about how Nintendo wasn't where his audience was. And so he leaves, he starts his own studio, it fails, and what happens? Yakuza Kiwami gets ported to Switch, and it's a huge hit. Like, who could have possibly seen that coming? Okay? Like, who could have possibly seen that happen? Like, you just know that Nagoshi is just seething. You know he's just upset that, like, his precious Yakuza has now been defiled by the kiddie hardware. It's so funny. It's so satisfying to see. I'm so excited about, like, the future of, these people, because I do think it does need to be said more, understood more, that like the Chinese are not your friends. Okay, they're not going to just let like developers like Nagoshi do whatever they want with no results, right? And a lot of people are like trying to say that like NetEase like cracking down on these developers is a woke thing. I really don't think so. Like, I think this is an industry-wide problem. Like all of the producers, most of them anyway, like all of them are just like people who are there because they've been there forever and don't really have any knowledge or know-how on how to like start a company from scratch, right? Like this was always my prediction as to what was going to happen to like the Nagoshi product. Like, I never thought it would amount to anything. I never thought it would come out. And yeah, my feelings were validated, right? This was a complete and total farce. And like people tried to make this out to be a good thing, that like, oh man, Yakuza is going to continue, but Nagoshi is going to move on to better and better things. Like people tried to like damage control and say that he didn't get fucked over. I'm sorry. People tried to damage control and tried to say that he got fucked over by Sega. Like, but no, he was a fuck up. Sega axed him. They sent him kicking. They kicked him to the curb, and they are doing better because of it. Because I think it's safe to say, at the very least, that Yakuza 7 and 8, they're better than 6. Like, people don't fucking hate them the way they did 6. Like, I do think we might be seeing some, we may someday see improvements in the franchise now that he's gone. But, like the idea that a lot of these developers had, that like going to the Chinese would somehow absolve them of all their sins and all of their like everything they've done in Japan, never gonna happen. Like that just isn't going to happen. You are gonna be chewed up and spit out by your Chinese overlords, and you're gonna like it. And I have to wonder just how many other studios are are going to get screwed over by this because I do think it's going to be a fair few. I don't think it's going to stop here. I know most people are talking about the Marvel Rivals thing. Not that Marvel Rivals was ever competitive or relevant, but um, for me personally, I'm most invested in like Nagoshi. Like I really, really wanted to see this guy fail, and the fact that he has is just cathartic to me. Like yeah, uh he got what he fucking deserved.